Thanks for coming this evening. The security people are coming to open up the door in the back, so if you're standing now, in a couple minutes, maybe they'll get out a chair for you so you can sit down. But you can look at it this way: while you're standing, you can maybe eat more, and you won't be so uncomfortable. Okay, well, it's my pleasure to introduce Don Boudreaux this evening. I could go through a long list of his accomplishments and appearances, but I think I'll just mention two things, or I guess maybe three things. One, he is a professor at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, near Washington, D.C., and he is the author of the book Globalization, which will be interesting if you have any questions or thoughts or views on globalization. You can probably find answers in there. And he is a blogger at Cafe Hayek, the blog Cafe Hayek. And with that, with no further ado, let me introduce Don Boudreaux, and he'll talk about how capitalism cleans the environment.
Thanks, Phil. I'm going to turn these. Is it on? Here? Working. All right. I'll put you in the dark. I'm going to first start with an apology. I shouldn't. I tried to load these pictures onto my little thumb drive, and my 15-year-old son, who's my technical expert, he instructed me how to do it, and it failed. And so I'm doing another method that's going to require me pointing at Phil Murray over here. So it's like a tag team effort. But I have all sorts of interesting pictures to show you. I have one up here already. You can tell how fascinating these pictures are. And this is a story I want to tell to debunk, or I think to debunk, a common narrative that has been around for quite some time. And it's an understandable narrative. And the narrative goes like this. Industrial capitalism, which has been around for roughly 250 years, and has expanded, of course, across the globe since it began in Northwestern Europe. Industrial capitalism has a lot of benefits. You know, it gives us some nice toys. You know, we all have our little slabs that we carry around now. We can talk to grandma or our boyfriends or girlfriends whenever we want. We got nice schools to go to. No question, industrial capitalism has a lot of benefits. However, one of the great downsides is that it has dirtied the environment. It has made the environment less clean. It has polluted the environment. And so we weigh the benefits against the costs. It may be that the benefits are worth the costs, but unquestionably, says this narrative, one of the costs of capitalism is a dirtier, less healthy, more dangerous environment. I think that narrative is wrong. Like most narratives, it has a kernel of truth, I will concede. There are certain kinds of pollution that we have today that people in the 15th century or 6th century did not suffer. But we overlook some really important ways in which industrial capitalism cleans our environment. In fact, cleans our environment in ways far more personal and important than the ways in which it in fact makes our environment less clean. If you lived prior to the industrial age, if you lived in, say, 16th century France, or 6th century BC Gaul, or anywhere in the globe, assuming you were a peasant, and you were probably a peasant since 98% of the people back then were peasants, you almost surely lived in a hut made of mud or some other earthen material. The floor you slept on was dirt. You had a thatched roof over your head, and animals lived in that, and animals do their business and it dripped on you. They caught fire. If you had an infection, bacteria got in and it often killed you. If you got what we today call a bad cold, it might have killed you because there were no medicines to protect against that, or your nutrition was so poor that your resistance was so low that you died from it. So my thesis is that capitalism has in fact made our environments far cleaner, far less polluted than those environments were prior to capitalism. And I just want to point out some ways that are common to us that we overlook in ways that modern industrial capitalism has made our lives cleaner. I got this idea, I shouldn't say this, but I will, because I already have the picture up. I got this idea at LaGuardia Airport many years ago. At the time I was living in New York, and I was using the men's room before the flight, and I was standing at one of these. This actually is a urinal, you probably recognize it, a urinal, at least you guys, in the Indianapolis airport. They all look so different. And I was standing at a urinal at LaGuardia Airport, and I realized this was maybe 12 years ago when self-flush urinals were just coming out. And this was one of those self-flush urinals, had the little red flashing light, and then you step away and it flushes, step back, step away and it flushes. I kind of did that. It's fun. This thing flushes itself. And I realized, this is, I don't have to touch anything. I don't have to get my hands dirty to touch something that, heaven knows who else touched it, and heaven knows what other bacteria might be on that handle. I just step away and it flushes by itself. It's kind of an innovative way, a small way to be sure, an innovative way in which industrial capitalism made our lives a little bit cleaner. Indeed, indoor plumbing is an important way in which industrial capitalism makes our lives cleaner. If you lived before the industrial age, unless you were a king or a queen, or a high nobleman, or maybe a high priest, you didn't have indoor plumbing. You had, at best, an outhouse. We all have indoor plumbing. We take it for granted. Sometimes I ask my students, who are about your age, at George Mason, on the first day of class, I asked them how many of them showered today, or took a bath, around. If you lived before the industrial age, and you were, as you likely were, again, a peasant, you showered in October, you bathed in October, and then not again until maybe March or April, when the streams became warm enough for you to go back into them. And you didn't bathe with soap. You sort of got to the stream that took the runoff from the cattle grazing on the side of the stream. It wasn't anything you would call a bath. You never brushed your teeth. You didn't floss. You had head lice. Imagine what dates were like. But anyway, so indoor plumbing itself is a way in which our private environments, our personal environments, are made much more clean by industrial capitalism. It's a way we take for granted. We don't think of it as an anti-pollution device, but that's exactly what that is. It's an anti-pollution device. And this one flushes itself. So you'll see the process we go through here. It's a little bit awkward, but you'll go along with it. By the way, on those questionnaires you have, the correct answer to all the questions is 5. I'm just teasing. The correct answer is whatever you think it is. Right? All right, so, and this one, you'll see it a little bigger here in just a minute. This is the least clear photo I have. It's the first one I took. By the way, it's an amazing world we live in. I took all of these photos with my little slab, my cell phone. This is this is an entrance to restrooms in the Atlanta airport. Took this picture a few years ago. Think about, I like airport bathrooms, you can tell. Think about a modern airport bathroom. It's an amazing design that keeps us clean. You don't have to touch a thing. There are no doors, there are no knobs to touch, and it's like a little labyrinth, right? So no one can see in, right? And the doors, at least in the better airports, they're wide. So you can have all your luggage with you, and you have these wide doors, and you walk through this little maze. You get into the bathroom, you use the toilet or the urinal, it flushes itself. You put your hand under the faucet turns on by itself and off by itself. Some soap dispenser dispenses by itself. You wave your hand in front of the paper dispenser. The paper you use to dry your hand dispenses by itself, and then you throw that paper out. There's usually a trash can with a big open mouth hole in the top, and you throw it. You don't have to touch a thing except yourself in the bathroom. That's a way that capitalism makes our private lives cleaner. It's a small innovation, we don't think about it, but those doors themselves are one of the ways, small way in, but one of the ways that capitalism makes our lives cleaner. Again, I apologize for the awkwardness of the attempt, but the pictures are so good, you'll get it. It's kind of personal. This is underwear. T-shirt, underwear. But the Harvard economic historian David Landis wrote a wonderful book in 1998 called The Wealth and Poverty of Nations. And he pointed out that the first thing that ordinary Britons bought when industrialization began in the 18th century was underwear. For whatever reason, we can speculate, for whatever reason, when industrialization begins, the textile industry is usually where it begins. It happened in Britain, it happened in America, it happened in Asia. Newly developing countries start textile industries. And Landis pointed out, and I didn't realize until I read Landis' book, and he had some evidence for it, that the rate of certain kinds of diseases, bacterial diseases, fell right afterward. Underwear keeps us clean in ways we don't appreciate today. See, back in the mid-18th century, the typical person worked on a farm. That person had one, maybe two changes of clothes. And there were no washing machines or automatic drying machines. And by the way, if there were, you couldn't have put what people back then wore into those machines because they weren't machine woven. They would have come apart. They couldn't have stood up to the vigorous beating that modern washing machines give to our clothes. And so people they didn't wear underwear. And they wore their clothes directly against their body. I'm not going to get much more personal, but you can understand that this is not the most clean way to live. And you were working and sleeping and getting around every day in that one pair, maybe two pairs of clothes, which could not really be vigorously washed. Underwear came along, affordable to ordinary people for the first time in the middle part of the 18th century in England. It was machine woven, so it could be washed vigorously and stand up to harsh soaps. So for the first time, our ancestors were able to have a barrier between their dirty clothes and bacteria. And they could change those underwear daily because they could afford enough to wear different underwear every day. I'm sure, I'm not going to really ask, most of you wear underwear. If we don't wear underwear today, we don't really have to because we wash our clothes every day, right? If you don't wear underwear today, you're making a social statement. You're like being cool, right? Back then, you were helping to save your own life. Underwear reduced the incidence of bacterial diseases. It raised life expectancy when it first emerged because it was the one kind of regularly affordable clothing people could have, and they bought it. That's it. It doesn't get more personal than this, I promise. Well, actually, there may be one. We'll see. Depends how far I get. Well, okay. This speaks for itself. Cleaned by capitalism. I'll get off of bathrooms.